I think you all know I'm Sheila Applegate by now. For alongside Andrew, I want to also recognize my family because I'm a co-captain. I captain with my husband, Ben, and my 5 boys, David, Ben, Ryan, Colin, and always, always our Andrew. I'm honored to get to introduce the next 2 keynote speakers, Ryan and G. Both of them are hosts for Windy City Live, which airs on the weekday mornings on ABC at 11 o'clock. And last year, they were our keynote speakers here for the first time. A year and a half ago, Ryan and G dedicated one of their shows to sharing their story about the loss of a loved one to suicide. I remember that day. I was pulling into my garage, and my good friend Nora called saying, "Are you at home? You need to turn on Windy City Live immediately." I spent the next hour watching an amazing show. I cried tears of sadness, knowing the pain and grief they had both suffered, losing their loved ones. But more so, I cried tears of joy, grateful that they were using their platform to start a conversation about suicide and to make an effort to educate their audience on mental illness and on suicide. I was personally thankful for the doctor that was on the show who did a segment on how to talk about suicide and proper language to use, because since my son died, I have been an advocate for talking about suicide properly. I find comfort at these walks because we all come together to advocate, to bring awareness, and to spend some time with people who understand the pain of the loss of someone to suicide, and to spend time with people who understand the struggle and the pain of dealing with a mental illness. Every year after the walk, I leave feeling better because I have heard people's stories and I realize I'm not alone. Gee, last year you shared your story about your father and how your family struggled with how he died. I know many have found comfort, because I know many have had the exact same struggle and found comfort because their family had struggles dealing with the stigma of suicide and had the need to try to keep secrecy with this thing. I truly believe the strength you showed sharing empowered so many here to talk about mental illness and suicide in a proactive way. So thank you. Ryan, your story was a little more personal for me. You come from a family of 5 boys. I have 5 boys. You lost your brother to suicide, and my boys lost their brother to suicide. So when you shared your story, I felt an immediate connection. In your story, you shared how you had such a love for music, and when your brother died, that love for music was gone. In my Andrew's last year of life, while he was struggling, I tried to bring music to him to bring him joy. Since his death, I too have now lost my joy of music. So Ryan, when you shared your story last year, you gave me hope that my music will come back and my love of it will come back. I don't think I'll ever write a song like you did, and therefore be able to donate the proceeds to the Chicago Walk like you did last year, but I do have hope and faith that my love of music will return as it did for you. So now it's my privilege to ask the 2 of you to join me on stage. I thank you for fighting alongside with all of us to bring awareness, education, and destigmatizing suicide. And thank you for your support and dedication to the Chicago Walk.
Thank you so much, Sheila. You gave me an award. I haven't even spoken yet. I might want to take this back. Thank you so much for coming out today. This is an incredibly difficult thing for all of us, and we were very, very reluctant to want to speak last year. We were incredibly reluctant to want to do the show on mental health a year and a half ago, but it's amazing because we have 3 people that sit at that desk every morning. And 2 of us have been directly affected by suicide, with my brother and with G's father. And we thought, how are we not doing a show on this? How are we not addressing this topic that affects so many people but has no voice? Nobody talks about suicide. Media, rarely do they report on it because they feel like it will encourage other people to do that. And we felt like, you know what, we have this forum and we have this platform, we have to do something. And it was the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever done on TV. It was the most difficult thing I've ever done on TV. And this is coming from a guy who has to interview Jay Cutler. Not easy. Not easy. But we felt like we had to get our stories out there because we were doing injustice by being silent. Our loved ones are silent right now. We are the ones that now have to speak for them and have to try to help other people. And I just felt like I lost my brother January 14th, 2009. It's been 6 years. And I didn't talk about it for probably 5 years. I didn't tell anybody about it. I was ashamed. I had guilt. I felt like I was a bad brother. There was a lot that goes through your minds. And everyone in here has probably felt that, right? You've all felt the guilt. You've felt the shame, the stigmas that come with suicide. And I remember finally coming out about it, talking to people about it, doing the show. Thanks to G, by the way, because I wanted to back out of that show about 2 days before because I was too nervous and scared and was wondering what other people would think about it. I have a huge support group, and they're here today. My friends are all here today. I want to thank them for being here. And also, because of all of you last year, I decided to fly my mom out here from California. My mom is here for the very first time. Thanks, Mom, for coming. And the whole thing is that we're all in this together, and I wanted my mom to feel the love and the support that you get from coming here today, because we're all in this club that none of us signed up for. None of us wanted to be here, but we are here because we have been elected into this inclusive, exclusive membership that we didn't want to stamp every year, right? But now we're doing good for other people. And we are in this together, and that's the biggest thing that I wanted my mom to see, who is a great mother, by the way. She went through the whole guilt process. I got to say, as a kid, if I snuck out of the house and got in trouble, I was grounded for 2 weeks. Zach, my brother, snuck out of the house. He got a pizza party when he came back. I still got to talk to you about that. But the message that I really wanted to talk about today is how life somehow is represented by 2 dates, right? At the end, life is represented by the day that you're born, here, and then the day that you die, here. Everyone in this tent knows the day that their loved one was born, and their birthday, and the day that they passed. Those dates are really hard. I don't know about for you, but they're really hard for me. The birthdays and the anniversary of his passing. For me, Zach, he was 20 years old, and days before I know that anniversary is coming, I can't sleep. I see people nodding their heads, same thing. You can't sleep, you think about it. I would clear my schedule knowing if it was January 10th, I would start clearing my schedule in my head thinking, I got to take that day off of work. I'm not going to work that day. In fact, I didn't go to work for a month after he passed. But life's represented by those 2 dates, the day that you're born, the day that you die. And that little dash that's in the middle is incredibly small. That dash should be incredibly big. The day that you're born should be there. The day that you die should be here. The dash should be in the middle. It would be hard to fit on a t-shirt, I know. But for all of us who have lost somebody, those 2 dates are the things that still resonate in our head, right? The birthdays and how hard that is, and then the day that they passed away. But today my message is I want you to think about the dash. Think about that dash, because that's the timeline of your loved one. All of the celebrations you had, all of the holidays you had, you know, the graduations. My little brother graduated from high school. I think it took him 7 years, but he wasn't a doctor. But that was one of the greatest days of his life, seeing him graduate. And I remember Cheryl Burton, who is a colleague at ABC7, sent me a card after my brother passed. She was one of the few people that knew. And she said, would you have rather had him for 20 years or not had him at all? And I think about that. That still stays with me. And I would take those 20 years any day of the week. And I think that's the way that you have to think about your loved one. And think about that dash. And think about the stories. Anyone who has a story about your loved one, have them tell it to you. Because as humans, we get the same stories in our head, right? You have your favorite stories about your loved one, but then you might talk. Last night, my mother and I went to dinner, and she told a funny story about my brother that I had totally forgotten about. I was a hockey player, and I was playing in a hockey game. My little brother got in a lot of trouble when he was younger, and I'm skating on the ice, and all of a sudden, and I have the puck too, all of a sudden, all the lights go out in the entire rink. We're skating dark, running into each other, like bumper cars. And I just remember thinking, please don't be Zach. Please. Of course it was Zach. You know, that's a funny story. We laughed at dinner last night, and telling those stories is what keeps his memory alive for us. Tell those stories, and that's what this walk to me is about. It's about keeping that spirit alive, keeping their memory alive, and knowing that those 2 dates that life represents are just 2 days of that person's life. Think about that timeline, the in-between, and that dash. And I'm going to leave you with that. I'm going to introduce G, because I know G has a story as well.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks. You know, honestly, Ryan mentioned me being an influence on why we did the show last year. I can't look at him or I'll cry. I'm trying not to cry this year. Anyway, yes, I did convince Ryan to do the show, because that's what I'm good at. But then the night before, I was so panicked because I don't think I had really ever thought about my father that much in a really long time. And then Ryan had to be the one to convince me to go on. So there we go. You know, Ryan just mentioned those 2 dates, and for me, it has been over 20 years since my father passed away by suicide. I was 13 years old, and I cannot remember the date that he passed away, because mentally, my mind cannot hold on to that date. And that's what I wanted to talk about this morning, because I think a part of your life freezes, and you're frozen. And that part of you at that age, when you lose someone so dear to you, and for me as a 13-year-old girl, it was the unconditional love of a father, stays with you. And I think a part of you stays that age for a reason. The only thing that can help you get unstuck is to really come to events like this, to share that person's name, and that's something that I said on the show. My father's name is Daemun Yi. It's never spoken, it's never said aloud, because my family really never talked about it for 15 years. I only had one fellow student come to my father's funeral because it just wasn't put in the paper. You didn't do that over 20 years ago. And I had one teacher, and it was because she was a teacher and knew what was going on, and it was her son that came to the funeral, and I remember his name, and I'll remember it forever. I really wish that 13-year-old G could have known that there were all your faces. I wish that 13-year-old G knew that she wasn't alone. And I think about all the 13-year-olds and younger, and all the ones that are older than 13 that have your faces looking back at them. So I hope you continue to say your loved ones' names, and I hope you know that you're doing wonderful work just by being here, continuing to celebrate those loved ones that are no longer here with you, because that's how you keep them alive and with you in your heart. It'll never get easier in the sense that you'll always miss their loss. Like I always think about my dad. I think about all the things that happened in my life, like we threw the baseball. Yesterday we sang in the 7th inning stretch at the Cubs.
We did the first pitch at Wrigley yesterday. Yeah.
And I thought, I wish like I could text this picture to my dad, because he loved baseball. And, I think about my wedding and how my dad won't be there. So your life is marked by that loss, and it'll continue, but you keep their love alive by saying their name. Thanks.
How many of you think of your loved one every single day? We're all in this together. And it's because of you that we came back this year, because we were overwhelmed by not only the show that we did and the feedback, and many of you have come up to me today and said, hey, I wrote you a letter, And we have read your letters. We were just overwhelmed by the feedback that we got from all of you and more people out there that are not yet ready for this walk. But let's try to encourage those people to come next year and make this the best walk in the entire country, which it is. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.